Have you ever had a morning that seemed ordinary until it quietly flipped your entire life upside down? That's exactly what happened to Emily Rivera, a 26-year-old woman living alone in a modest apartment on the east side of Boulder, Colorado. It was a Monday morning in early spring. Emily had just poured herself the first cup of coffee when her phone began to buzz. It was her younger sister, Natalie, currently working as a nanny for a wealthy family in the northern suburbs. "I can't make it, Em. I've got a fever, almost 104. My head is pounding. I don't think I can handle the girls today." Natalie's voice was hoarse, interrupted by weak coughing. Emily frowned. Natalie was the healthy one. For her to call for help, it had to be serious. "The girls?" Emily asked. "Hazel and Ivy. Remember? The 5-year-old twins I always talk about. Their dad, Daniel, has a major meeting today and absolutely can't stay home. I can't let him down." Emily sighed. Ever since she'd been laid off from the Children's Community Center 3 months ago, life had been tight. Resumes went unanswered. Bills stacked higher. She had no real reason to say no, except for the unease of walking into a stranger's house to care for children she'd never met. "I've never met them, Nat." "You've worked with dozens of kids, Em. I trust you. Please, I just need you today." "The address is 1246 Meadow Lane. I'll send you the GPS now." Emily sat in silence for a few seconds after the call ended. Her hands still cradled the warm mug of coffee, but her heart felt off balance. There was something unexplainable, whispering to her that today wouldn't be just another day. And she was right, completely right. When Emily pulled up in front of 1246 Meadow Lane, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The 2-story house stood quietly in the middle of a pristine garden with perfectly trimmed hedges and a soft white exterior that radiated a gentle elegance. The morning light bathed the home in warmth, completely at odds with the nervousness churning inside her chest. She pressed the doorbell. Within seconds, the front door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, steady in his posture, with tousled dark brown hair as if freshly air-dried. A crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, paired with beige khakis, made him look both polished and approachable. His steel blue eyes, tired but sincere, met Emily's anxious gaze immediately. "You're Emily? Natalie's sister?" he asked, his voice calm, deep and slightly hoarse like someone who hadn't slept well. "Yes, I'm here to look after the girls today, in her place," Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you. I really appreciate this. Hazel and Ivy are in the living room. I've got a meeting that'll last most of the morning, but if you need anything at all, just text me. The kitchen's in the back. Toys and books are everywhere." He guided her into a sunlit open space. Everything inside was tasteful and tidy, yet inviting. Framed children's drawings hung on the wall. A plush bunny leaned against a bookshelf. This wasn't just a house. It was a home, with layers of memory and quiet love stitched into every corner. As they approached the living room, Emily slowed her steps and then stopped altogether. 2 little girls were sitting on the rug, building a Lego tower. The moment they spotted her, they froze, then suddenly jumped up, eyes wide. "Miss Sunlight!" they screamed in unison, running straight into her arms. Emily stood frozen for several seconds. Miss Sunlight? Her heart pounded. That name. She hadn't heard it in over 2 years. And then, like a reel of film unraveling, the memories flooded back. 2 summers ago, while volunteering at a children's camp in a nearby county, Emily had cared for a pair of twins who had just lost their mother. They had called her Miss Sunlight because whenever she sang, their faces lit up like sunshine. She had sung lullabies, drawn suns in bright yellow crayon, and held them like they were her own. "You two are," Emily stammered. "Hazel and Ivy," one of them beamed, still hugging her tightly. Daniel stood behind them, just as stunned. "You're the one they never stopped talking about," he whispered. The room held its breath. Emily knelt on the rug, hugging both girls to her chest as waves of emotion surged through her. She hadn't just been asked to look after two random children. She had just been handed back a piece of her heart she hadn't even known was missing. "Wait," Hazel suddenly cried, still clinging to Emily's hand. "Ivy, go get the drawing." Both girls let go and bolted upstairs like tiny whirlwinds. Daniel and Emily stood frozen, speechless. Within seconds, the pounding of little feet echoed through the house, and the twins returned, breathless and wide-eyed, holding a crumpled sheet of yellowed paper. "Do you remember this?" Ivy asked, her voice trembling slightly. Emily took the paper, a messy crayon drawing, two little girls holding hands with a tall woman under a smiling sun. In the bottom corner, it read in crooked lettering, "To Miss Sunlight, from Hazel and Ivy." Emily covered her mouth, tears welling up uncontrollably. "You kept this all this time?" "I put it in my treasure box," Hazel said seriously. "Every time I was sad, I'd look at it and sing, 'You are my sunshine.'" Daniel turned his face away quietly. Since that fateful morning, Emily had begun returning to the house where she had unexpectedly stumbled upon one of the most beautiful memories of her life. What started as helping for one day turned into a few days a week, and slowly she became part of the rhythm at the house on Meadow Lane. Hazel and Ivy clung to her like glue. She was Miss Sunlight, the only one who could sing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in a voice warm enough to make their little hearts feel safe. Emily helped them bake cookies, build blanket forts in the living room, and plant herbs in the backyard. Though she had only recently re-entered their world, she had quickly become a place of comfort, like a familiar storybook they never tired of. Daniel remained polite and grateful, but kept his distance. He hadn't forgotten the day Hazel sobbed herself to sleep when Miss Sunlight disappeared from their lives after summer camp 2 years ago. He feared it would happen again, and that his daughters' hearts would shatter once more. But that fear melted away one peaceful evening. That night, Hazel and Ivy were worn out after a day full of play. Both curled up in their blankets, eyes drooping, but neither willing to sleep without Miss Sunlight. "Miss Emily, can you sing for us?" Hazel whispered, tugging on her sleeve. "The Sunshine Song." "Please," Ivy added, her voice barely above a breath. Emily smiled, brushing back their hair. Then she began to hum gently. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Her voice, soft and steady, floated through the room under the warm glow of the nightlight. Slowly, the twins drifted into sleep, lips still moving faintly with the melody, hands still holding one another. From the doorway, Daniel watched silently. The light cast a soft hue over Emily's face, and in that moment, he saw it clearly. A home that had once felt hollow was now full of breath and warmth again. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Emily stepped out of the bedroom and gently closed the door behind her. Daniel was still there, his gaze never having left her. "Thank you for everything you're doing," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I think I'm the one being healed," Emily replied with a soft smile. "These girls are giving that back to me." A tender silence followed. No words were wasted, just eyes meeting for a little longer than they needed to, and somehow neither of them moved. Emily didn't know what lay ahead, but that night she knew one thing with perfect clarity. She had found something she thought she'd lost long ago, a place where she truly belonged. Daniel was in the kitchen when Emily came downstairs. "Thank you for everything," he said quietly, voice sincere. Emily smiled, but there was a subtle sadness in her eyes. "Carla will be well enough to return tomorrow," she whispered. Daniel nodded. A brief silence passed between them before he looked up and met her eyes. "But if you ever have time, "Would you come by to visit the girls?" he asked. "And me too. I'd really like that." Emily didn't answer right away, but in her eyes, something had just awakened. Ever since that first lullaby night, Emily's presence in Daniel's home was no longer temporary. She began coming over more frequently, not just to watch the twins, but because it felt natural, like she belonged there. No one had to say it aloud. It lived in the way they all looked at each other, in every shared laugh, every cozy evening spent side by side. Daniel found himself spending more time at home too, citing work-life balance as the reason. But in truth, he just didn't want to miss any moment with Emily. One Saturday afternoon, he took all three girls to the movies. Emily sat between Hazel and Ivy, both girls clutching an arm of hers, and Daniel couldn't take his eyes off the way she smiled when she leaned down to whisper something to them. There was something so radiant, so gentle about her, something he hadn't realized he missed. After the movie, the four of them stopped by the girls' favorite ice cream parlor. "Miss Emily, chocolate with marshmallows like always," Ivy giggled. "And mine with extra waffle bits," Hazel chimed in. Daniel stood beside Emily while they waited for the cones. The soft afternoon light fell on her face, her hair gently tousled by the breeze. He stared a moment too long, long enough to know it wasn't just admiration anymore. Emily turned and caught his gaze. "Do I have something on my face?" she asked with a soft laugh. Daniel looked away quickly, shaking his head. "No, nothing at all." That evening, as they drove home, Hazel was asleep against Emily's shoulder, Ivy drifting off in the back seat. Emily hummed a soft tune under her breath. Daniel glanced at her through the rearview mirror, and something stirred in him, an unfamiliar warmth that felt suspiciously like belonging. From weekend walks in the park to bedtime story hours, from planting carrots in the backyard to laughing on the rug when Hazel spilled a whole bag of flour, every moment seemed to add another thread to the invisible bond growing between the four of them. Daniel didn't know when it started, his slow fall into something deeper. Maybe it was when Emily bent down to wipe Ivy's tears after a scrape on the knee, or when she gently scolded Hazel for hiding candy under her pillow. But he was sure of one thing, the day he caught himself watching her for over a minute without blinking. Something inside him had already shifted. Everything seemed to be falling into place, just the way Emily's heart had quietly hoped for. She woke up each morning to messages from Daniel. "Hazel wants to know if you're coming today." Ivy gave her scribbled drawings that read, "Miss Sunlight, plus Papa, plus Hazel, plus Ivy, house, home." No one said it aloud, but Emily knew. Something was growing here. Something that felt a lot like love. Then came that Friday morning. Emily was making coffee when her phone buzzed, a new email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line stood out. Interview invitation, Rising Seeds Foundation. She froze. Rising Seeds, a nonprofit educational organization in Seattle she had once dreamed of joining. She'd submitted her resume over 6 months ago, long before any of this, and had since forgotten it. Now they were inviting her to interview for a program coordinator position, generous salary, full benefits, and a potential career milestone. Emily stared at the screen. She didn't know whether to feel excited or heartbroken, maybe even afraid. She told no one that day. She showed up at Daniel's house as usual, played with the girls, applied cream on Ivy's mosquito bites, helped Hazel draw a new family portrait. Her, Daniel, the girls, and a massive sun smiling above them. Emily smiled, but her heart was stirring in ways she couldn't name. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Daniel was on the porch reading. Emily stepped out softly. "I need to tell you something." Daniel closed the book and looked at her. "Rising Seeds, the nonprofit in Seattle, they invited me to interview next week." He remained silent for a few seconds. That's the job you used to dream about, right? Yes, I always thought if I got it, it would be the biggest accomplishment of my life. He nodded slowly. And now you're unsure? I don't know. I don't want to leave this. I don't want to leave Hazel and Ivy. But I don't know if I'm letting something important slip away from myself. Daniel stayed silent so long she began to feel cold. Finally, he exhaled. Emily, you're 26. You've got a whole future ahead of you. I can't be the reason you say no to that. You think I'm staying just because of you? I think you're staying because it feels so good. It's easy to forget what you once wanted. His voice lowered. I don't want you to regret it. Emily's eyes flared, hurt and frustration flashing. Do you have feelings for me, Daniel? He didn't answer, just closed his eyes for a moment, then whispered, It's because I love you, that I'm terrified of being the reason you give up your dreams. Emily stood, her eyes now shining with unshed tears. If you really did, you'd fight for me. She walked into the house without looking back. That night, Hazel and Ivy stayed up late, begging for the Sunshine Song. Emily sang it, but tears soaked her pillow. She didn't know what she'd just turned down, or what she might be losing, but her heart had never felt so hollow. Emily left on a quiet Tuesday morning, without goodbyes. She left a short, handwritten note for Hazel and Ivy, reminding them to stay healthy and to keep dreaming beautiful dreams. But from that day on, the house on Meadow Lane was no longer filled with laughter. Hazel and Ivy changed. Once lively, playful girls, they grew unusually quiet. They no longer fought over which book to read, no longer ran around the kitchen making cookies. Meals became still, and their giggles disappeared from the walls. Daniel noticed everything. The twins began to have nightmares, dreams filled with closing doors and cars driving away forever. One night, Daniel woke to Ivy sobbing in her sleep, calling for Miss Sunlight. He had thought he was doing the right thing, that letting Emily go was what she deserved, for her future, for her freedom. But with every silent night that followed, he realized the emptiness she left wasn't just in the girls' bedroom. It was inside him. Then one evening, while fixing Hazel's bedding after another bad dream, Daniel found a small folded piece of paper under her pillow. It was written in shaky, childlike handwriting in purple ink. Dear Miss Sunlight, we miss you every day. Ivy says you'll come back when the stars sing again. I sleep with your drawing under my pillow. Daddy is sad too, but he hides it. If you still love us, please come back. Love, Hazel. Daniel sat motionless for minutes, the letter trembling in his hand, as if someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart tight. He remembered Emily's eyes that last night, hurt, disappointed, but still filled with unsaid love. And then he understood. He hadn't let her go for her sake. He had pushed her away out of fear. The fear that someone like him, a widowed father with heavy baggage and unhealed grief, could never be worthy of someone like her. But the biggest mistake he had made was believing Emily needed someone flawless. Now he only wished for one thing, a chance to tell her that he was finally ready to love. Not perfectly, but fully. Seattle rained often. Emily had always believed the city would be the perfect new beginning. Her dream job at Rising Seeds, a cozy apartment just blocks from the office, kind colleagues, and meaningful projects in early childhood education. But 3 weeks in, she realized the one thing missing was belonging. At night, she would wake from half-formed dreams, ones filled with Hazel and Ivy's laughter, the smell of cookies in Daniel's kitchen, and long afternoons reading in the garden. She kept trying to convince herself this was the right decision, that she was finally living for herself. But each day that passed, her heart felt emptier. Then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, she opened the mailbox outside her apartment and found a small yellow envelope in a familiar scrawl. No return address. Just a name. Miss Sunlight. Hands trembling, she opened it. Inside was a crayon drawing, two little girls holding hands, standing beside a tall woman with long hair under a starry sky. Beneath the picture, written in a shaky, innocent hand, "Miss Sunlight, do you still love us?" Emily collapsed on the doorstep, tears spilling freely for the first time in weeks. Winter was ending in Boulder when Emily came back. She stood silently in front of 1246 Meadow Lane, her hand gripping the suitcase handle. Light snow fell, coating the roof with a thin layer of memory. Before she could even ring the bell, the door swung open. Hazel and Ivy, matching in pink pajamas, burst out like twin comets, shouting, "Miss Sunlight!" Emily dropped to her knees just in time to catch them as they launched into her arms. "You came back? You really came back," Ivy sobbed. "Say you'll stay this time," Hazel cried, hugging her tightly. "I promise I'll never leave again," Emily whispered, holding them close as if afraid to let go. From the doorway, Daniel watched. His eyes were red. He stepped outside, saying nothing, just holding out a hand toward her. Emily walked to him, still cradling the girls, and let herself fall into his embrace, because it felt like home. No words were needed. Under the snowfall, they held one another, letting their tears speak every sentence they never got to say. That night, Emily sat between Hazel and Ivy on their bed, one twin curled on each side, their tiny hands clutching her sleeves. "Can you sing Sunshine again?" Hazel whispered. "You're not leaving after this, right?" Ivy asked, almost afraid. Emily smiled, pressing a kiss to each forehead. "I'm staying, I promise." Then she began to sing, her voice soft as the wind. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Their eyelids fluttered closed under the familiar lullaby. And this time, when they fell asleep, Emily remained right there, holding their hands, whispering a quiet vow. "I'll never leave again." 1 month after Emily returned, the house at 1246 Meadow Lane seemed to carry a new soul, livelier, warmer, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh-baked cookies from the kitchen. Hazel and Ivy had come back to themselves, silly, joyful, and absolutely certain that Miss Sunlight was never leaving again. Emily had found a part-time teaching job at a private preschool in Boulder. The pay wasn't grand, the title not as prestigious as Seattle, but it was enough. More importantly, it allowed her to be present with the two little girls and the man her heart had never truly left behind. Daniel had changed too. He kept less distance, smiled more often, and was always home for dinner, no matter how full his schedule. Every evening, the four of them sat around the dining table, sharing small stories like a family that had always been meant to be. One quiet Friday night, after the girls had fallen asleep and Emily had finished their usual lullaby, she stepped into the backyard and found Daniel waiting beneath the garden lights. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Emily," he said, his voice low but steady. She walked toward him, curious. Daniel took a deep breath, then suddenly dropped to one knee. From the pocket of his jacket, he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, exactly the kind Emily had always admired, not flashy, but meaningful. "Emily Rivera," he said, eyes locked on hers. "Would you like to officially become a part of this family? Not because Hazel and Ivy need you, not because I'm lonely, but because I love you, in a way I didn't know I was capable of loving." Emily raised her hand to her mouth, tears already gathering in her eyes. "You know," she whispered, "I used to think I'd never be loved like this. But I was wrong." She nodded. "Yes, I do." Daniel stood and gently slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he leaned in to kiss her, a familiar voice called down from the upstairs window. "What about us?" Hazel's voice rang clearly. "Don't we get a kiss too?" They both laughed. Emily looked up to see Hazel and Ivy perched at the window, chins resting on hands, grinning from ear to ear. "Tomorrow morning, my princesses," Daniel replied, "and we'll make pancakes to celebrate." That night, for the first time in many months, Emily slept with a ring on her finger and a heart that had finally found its way home. 3 months after the proposal, on a radiant spring morning, the backyard of 1246 Meadow Lane had been transformed with string lights, wildflowers, and a long, white-covered table. There were no choirs, no extravagant parties, just their closest loved ones, in a space filled with quiet joy and deep love. Hazel and Ivy, dressed in cream-colored princess dresses, ran circles around the garden, whispering and giggling in their own secret world. Emily stood before the mirror in what used to be the guest room, now hers. Her dress was simple, perfectly fitted, soft like her spirit, honest and graceful. "You look beautiful, Mommy," Ivy said, wrapping her arms around Emily's waist. Emily laughed, smoothing the girl's hair. "Did you just call me Mommy?" "Of course," Hazel chimed in. "You're not Miss Sunlight anymore. You're Mommy Sunshine now." Emily's heart softened. She knelt down and hugged them both tightly. "I love you both so much." Outside, Daniel waited. He wore a charcoal gray suit, simple, elegant. When Emily stepped into the garden, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, their eyes met, and the rest of the world faded away. The ceremony was brief, heartfelt. "I once believed my heart couldn't love again," Daniel said, voice trembling slightly. "Until you came back, with light and life." Emily smiled through her tears. "I thought I had to choose between love and purpose," she said. "But it turns out, this family is what I've been searching for all along." After their first kiss as husband and wife, the guests clapped joyfully. Hazel and Ivy ran toward them, tackling both into the grass, all four laughing in a bundle of tangled limbs and happiness. That afternoon, they shared pancakes, played favorites games, and drew family portraits, this time with a big red heart circling all four of them. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Emily looked at Daniel and whispered, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'm exactly where I belong." Daniel squeezed her hand. "So do I." Across the garden, Hazel whispered to Ivy, "We're the happiest family in the world, right?" Ivy nodded firmly. "Definitely, because the sunshine finally came back to us." One early summer morning, Emily stepped out of the bathroom with a pregnancy test in her hand. She didn't say anything, just smiled. Her eyes sparkled with happiness and surprise, as if a quiet miracle had just arrived once more. Daniel saw the smile, froze for a moment, then slowly walked over and placed a hand on her belly. "It's real?" he whispered. Emily nodded, eyes gleaming with tears. The news of Emily's pregnancy quickly filled their warm little home, and no one was more excited than Hazel and Ivy. The twins instantly stepped into their big sister roles, proudly taking charge of the tiniest tasks, bringing Emily pillows, squeezing orange juice, and every night placing their hands gently on her belly to whisper, "Baby, we love you." One evening, Ivy pressed her ear to Emily's stomach and shouted, "I heard something! He's laughing with me." Emily laughed while Daniel looked on, eyes glowing with joy at the growing life within their family, not just in number, but in love. Throughout the pregnancy, the whole family revolved around Emily. Daniel rose early each morning to make her breakfast. Hazel and Ivy took turns reading fairy tales to their unborn brother. Emily had never felt so deeply loved, so completely held. When the big day arrived, it was a calm afternoon. The baby arrived healthy, with big eyes, dark brown hair, and a cry that echoed through the delivery room like a declaration. "I'm here!" Daniel held his son for the first time, his lips trembling, though his smile stayed steady. "We'll call him Dante," he said, looking up at Emily resting on the hospital bed, her face glowing. Hazel and Ivy arrived at the hospital with hand-drawn cards and flowers. When they saw their brother for the first time, they stood in quiet awe. Then Hazel whispered, "He's beautiful." "Just like Mommy," Ivy nodded with certainty. From the day Dante came home, the house, already filled with warmth, became even more alive. Sleepless nights, soft cries, the smell of milk, and bursts of laughter blended into a new kind of music, one only a family could make. One crisp autumn evening, the family sat together on the backyard lawn. Daniel and Emily leaned into one another. Hazel and Ivy lay on either side of Emily, hands resting where Dante had once grown. Baby Dante slept peacefully in his father's arms, lips curled in a tiny dream-filled smile. The sun was setting. Golden light bathed the garden. Leaves drifted gently to the grass like gifts falling from the sky. Emily whispered, her voice barely audible through the golden light, "If there's a place called heaven, I think I've been living in it all along." Daniel kissed the top of her head, his voice soft. "You are the light, Emily. You brought heaven to all of us." And in that moment, with nothing else needed, this family somehow was whole. If this story touched your heart even just a little, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We share stories like this every week, tales of love, healing, second chances, and the quiet beauty of family. Like, comment, and share this video if it made you smile, cry, or feel something real. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss another story that might just stay with you long after the credits roll. Thank you for watching. You are our sunshine,